to SafeDefend Live. It's been a rough week in America. Apparently, you can't go to Walmart anymore without getting stabbed. I had a friend that was in the KPMG offices in New York City when a man came in with a rifle and started shooting people. We have it on video. We saw him walk down the street. Nobody said anything. He walked in the building, and people get killed. It's going to be an interesting discussion. I want to get Doc's feedback on what he thinks, but my personal opinion is we are so afraid to say this is going to happen to me or my family that we're unwilling to do anything because we just live in this blissful world where nothing ever goes wrong. Well, America, no offense, wake up. Wake up. It's happening every week. 2 hikers were murdered in the mountains of Arkansas on a hike this week. People are losing their ever-loving minds. So if you think that you're safe when you go out and you own a business and you don't think you're going to be held liable, if you don't have security protocols in place for your employees and your customers, you better look in the mirror because that's not the fact. It'll be interesting to see how this thing with Walmart plays out with the stabber. So, Doc, I'm off my soapbox.
Yeah, well, I can't argue with anything you're saying. It's a problem. I mean, and I see a couple problems. I wanted to talk or just chat a little bit about both those cases, the New York case as well as the Michigan case at the Walmart, right? And as I'm listening to you, one of the things that jumps into my mind, and we were talking about this, you brought this up, is the fact that New York isn't Arkansas, right?
No.
You mentioned just before we went live here, it's not Arkansas. This is like a place where guns are not exactly welcome, right? Especially in the public arena, right? It's a very, very gun control type state, right? And when you look at those photos, it's alarming. And this guy is just literally out there walking. And one of the things, and I wasn't going to talk about this, but I'll touch on this before I go on to the thing I wanted to just chat with you about, is how real the bystander effect is, and how real not being predisposed as to what might you do in this, right? It's like we got our like an ostrich, right? We got our heads in the sand or something, right? And we just nothing happens, and then it happens, right in front of our face. And this bystander effect is really interesting because it's that concept where someone else is going to take care of it, or I don't want to get involved, or this assumption that somehow magically the police are going to arrive, or just a number of things, right? And it's really a psychological thing. We see this all the time. There's a fight breaks out in the street, and everybody's standing there watching it, or videotaping it, or just standing around doing nothing, right? And then they just let it happen, and then someone ends up getting hurt or killed. And so it kind of goes back to this apathetic, or this apathy that we get on this. It's kind of like, well, it's never going to happen here. That only happens in big cities, or that only happens in schools or wherever. And the bottom line is that, does it happen often? No, it doesn't. However, I think it goes really unreported because the things we don't think about is the Walmart type attacks, right? We only think of guns. And when you look at the stats, they basically track shootings, active shootings. And that's like what the FBI Secret Service track. They do not consider knives. They don't consider other things other than guns. And also the biggest thing that they don't consider is averted attacks. And I'm really getting into that averted attack space, because an averted attack would have happened if it wasn't averted. And so when you look at the real threat on this, it's much bigger than we think. The FBI just has no ability to, the way that they collect their stats, they have no ability to do non-firearms related active killer or active shooter type stuff, right? They have no way to track what cases were averted by a teacher who, was paying attention and reported it, or the guy who saw the person, 3 blocks away walking from the subway with a rifle and then reported it. And so that, that's something that we have to do. And it has to do not only with training, but also really preparing yourself, preparing your organization. What are you predisposed to do? Are you predisposed to just not do anything, to just not call, to not report it, to not or just videotape it, or do you have training, or at least some sort of a sequence or a checklist, right? That if this happens, this is what I'm trained to do. And so, for example, are very simple things that we do in SafeDefend in terms of the response, right? And we got our safety cabinets with the tools in it. So we now got the ability to stop the bleed, right? Or at least try to control that, right? We have the ability to know what the best approach is for lockdowns or evasion, or how the heck we do escape these situations. What do we already know about the building or location where we're at? You know, what do we do to, you got a kid who's being bullied, right? And he's in crisis, about crisis intervention and de-escalation. And what are we predisposed to do? God forbid you got to fight the person, the bad guy. What are you predisposed to do, and what tools do you have? It's a checklist, and it's something that when it happens, you got to be able to just click that checklist and go down and do what you need to do, because these are very real situations, and the fact that it doesn't happen very often is very, very deceptive, in my opinion. And that's kind of like the whole thing I didn't want to talk about today, right? Based on our conversations, I just think it's really important. What are your thoughts on that, especially with the checklist?
Well, it's a reality of this. If something breaks out, just like the lady that was beaten to a bloody pulp in the streets this week as well, or last week, you know, everybody had their camera out videotaping. They have great evidence now. It's awesome, but nobody intervened. They let this poor woman get the, snot beat out of her. It is a real thing. And the challenge is we don't train to respond. We do not teach people how to respond when that happens. What should you do? SafeDefend does, but we as a society have not accepted that that's something we need to get into. We want to stay out of it. We don't want to get hurt. We don't want our family drawn through it. We don't want to end up on Facebook or Twitter or you name it. We don't want to end up someplace on social media with people talking about our family because we got in the middle of something. And that's a reality.
Exactly. And then the other piece of this is the political piece, right? The people that are the narcissists, right? The people who are trying to push an agenda. And, the media is the biggest culprit here, but it's still, the media is driven by, money on people that have agendas and political ambitions. Prime example here. Okay. We had, when was that? It was just past week, right? So I think it was July 26th was the attack in Walmart. So you have a guy with a folding knife, right, who goes and stabs 11 people. So you have 11 casualties. Now, as far as I know, no one died. Okay. Then 2 days later, you have this guy that we're all hearing about coming into the NFL headquarters there in Manhattan with the rifle. Then he kills 4 people, maybe 5 people. I think it was 4. I can't remember. And he shot 4 or 5 people. They all died. Okay. And what do we hear? Okay. Well, the only thing we hear is the national news talking about gun control, talking about it's, more policy debates, follow-up coverage. It's almost like a feeding frenzy. Okay. And I think, and it's still in the news this morning. What do we have on the Walmart stabbing? Well, it was treated as a kind of a local human interest story. And really the thing that came out of it was how much of a hero the guy was. And he was the ex-Marine who pulled the gun on the guy. Right. And basically stopped it from there. And mostly local coverage. And then as I'm looking through some of the comments and on some of the online platforms, the thing is, someone says on the knife attack, well, they should have been able to stop that knife attack. Who's going to stop a 5-inch, 3-inch folder? I mean, everybody carries those, right? And so we've got this huge problem, not only with people that aren't predisposed or trained to basically deal with it, but they're bombarded every day with really the wrong message, which is it's not about the friggin' tool. Okay. Yes. If you want to kill somebody, use a rifle, a high capacity rifle. That is the best way to kill people. No doubt about it. Is there issues with guns and access? Yes, but it is a human factor problem, not a tool problem, because we have seen time and time again when a person cannot get a gun, the attack still happens. They use the next easy thing they can get, which is number two after guns, is knives. And we see this especially in the school space with kids because they do have access issues. They have, I'm not an adult issue type stuff to try to get to the range or get to a gun. What do? 40%, nearly half of them use a knife. And yet, when you go to the security conferences and you look at who's buying what, the superintendents and the corporations are buying stuff that is going to focus on a specific weapon like a gun. And then again, like I always tell people that I train and talk to a lot, if you're preparing for the gun, you're going to miss the knife or the truck that runs over everybody in the parking lot. And so we've got like two major issues that we have to navigate here. One is the training and your predisposition to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Which is a training issue. And then the other issue, which is this whole misaligned and misplaced concept about what preventing these things really amounts to. And these are the constant things that we're fighting on. But we have to get and still just keep this fight going, because you've got to be able to focus on the human factors, the behavior, the thing that's driving the violence, not once it's initiated, what they're using to commit the violence.
I think that's a great comment, and I think it piggybacks on what I'm going to say. We have a mental health problem in the United States. Years ago, we decided to get rid of mental health institutions because they were labeled as a bad place to put people. So we reduced the size of those places to get treated immensely, if not completely, in a lot of areas. So to add to that problem, the root cause of it is a mental health issue. It's a mental health crisis. They're going through a crisis. They need help, typically. The young man in New York, they say he has CTE, went there because he was, had mental illness issues. I'm sure the young man, the person in Michigan who stabbed those people, I'm sure it's going to come back. He had a mental health issue that wasn't dealt with properly. Until we realize that going to a mental health institution is not a stigma, it is a help for society. And we have a place to get these people treated and they're taken care of like we used to when this didn't happen all the time. It's not going to be fixed. You can take all the guns off the street, it's going to be knives. You take all the knives off the street, it'll be baseball bats. Take all the baseball bats off the street, it'll be sledgehammers.
Right.
I mean, take sledgehammers away, people are going to use screwdrivers. I mean, there's a tool that will do damage to people if you're sick enough to go do that kind of thing. And I think that's your point. I just want to say, from my perspective, until we address and assess mental health challenges in our organization and address them, this isn't going to be fixed, folks. It's not going to stop. So stop looking over here, stop being blinded by the noise, and look at the problem. Let's address the root cause problem.
Yep.
So
well said, Dave. Well said.
I'm just a guy, Doc. I'm not as educated as you are. I see it. I'm like, look, this could have been stopped if you would have given this guy a hug and gotten him the help he needed and made sure he had what he had, right?
Yeah. It's sad that it's really amazing that sometimes that's all it is.
It is. It is. Well, Doc, if we were in charge, things would be different, but we're not. But I will tell you, if you're watching us today, take a long, hard look at what you're reading and seeing. Do your research. See what's going on around you. Don't be blinded by the noise. Realize that if you have a business or you have a school, you need to put things in place that notify, give people the training to prepare so they can know what to do. The one thing I will say about the New York shooting, there was an office full of people that knew what to do because they barricaded the snot out of that door. That's the best barricade jump I've ever seen in my life. They were trying to stay alive, and somebody knew what to do and did it. So congrats to those folks out there. Good job. Glad you weren't injured. For those that lost family members, our prayers are with you and your friends. So with that, Doc, another episode of SafeDefend Live. I guess we're out of here.
We are.
All right. Bye, everybody.
See you.